welcome to our end of the year State of the Eagles. David Moulton joined by FGCU Athletic Director Ken Kavanagh, and no, we have not had a falling out. All right, we're obviously just, keeping our proper distance these days, and good to see you. Obviously not under these circumstances in which all your years of college athletics, has there ever been anything like this before?
Nothing even close to it, and that's, I think, the hard part for everybody. We're used to routines. We're used to seasons.
Sure.
Even the off season, we're used to what we kind of do, and the off season came way too early. But we're all just trying to do the right thing, stay safe, and hopefully in another couple of weeks or months we'll be back to normalcy, at least the best to our abilities.
And very weird from a college sports standpoint that two seasons end at exactly the same time. A winter sports season comes to an end, and then of course an abbreviated spring season comes to an end. So let's go back and wrap up the winter, which isn't the biggest but is the most high profile of seasons here at FGCU. You've got two basketball teams and you've got a swimming and diving program. Let's start with the women's basketball team. I guess we will never know if this, in the first 18 years of FGCU women's basketball, was their best team, but they were 30-3. They finished nationally ranked in the coaches poll. Another regular season ASUN championship, deemed by the conference to be, hey, this is our representative if we had gone forward. And Ken, I could argue if it's not the first, it's the second best team that Coach Semesco's ever had.
Yeah, I think all the information that's put into the system would bear that out. Certainly the highest RPI that we've ever had, and I think we were 34th when the season ended, including our non-conference RPI, all the success we had. A Duke team that we beat by 21, last I knew they were in the top 30 in the RPI, and UCF, who we beat by 20 or 21, they were like 35th in the RPI, not to mention other really good quality wins against the South Dakota States and the USFs and other teams that were on that schedule, which when we finished it up last year, Carl was really concerned, even with the veteran team coming back, he bit off more than we could chew, and it certainly wasn't that case.
When the regular season ended, I asked him at the time, that was 28-3, if I had, before the season, said to you, I'll give you 28-3. He's like, wow. He said, we didn't even know if we'd go 500 in non-conference play. They ended up 2-2 against teams ranked in the top 50 of the RPI, 6-2 against teams that were ranked in the top 100. And I thought 4 years ago that group of seniors, the Gleasings, the Haas, the Whitney Knights, the Atwaters, that maybe there would never be a group as special as that. But you come back 4 years later, and it's a group as special as that.
Yeah, and I think really when the postseason awards, which we were very proud of, Carl and his staff for the 10th time in 12 years being named Coaching Staff of the Year. Carrie got both the Player of the Year and the Scholar Athlete of the Year, which was phenomenal. It's the first one to do so since Sarah Hansen did back in 13-14. Ty repeated as a Defensive Player of the Year. But there are a lot of cases. Naz, I believe, made second team. You look at Davion and the great year she had. I think we split votes, and we could have had a number of other individuals that could have been in a position for additional awards, but I don't know if there was FGCU fatigue or it's just the fact that our votes got split. But just was an unbelievable year, and something that, as we look back on, certainly, as you mentioned, will be ranked as the best team, or no worse than the second when you put that team from a few years ago.
And it will be a very different looking team next year, because not only the 5 seniors, but there are 3 redshirt juniors who, as the time of this taping, we're all planning on leaving. And so, that's over half the roster that is going to be different for next season. It's funny though, 4 years ago, Semesco was in that very same situation. It's the last time I didn't pick FGCU to win the conference, because I picked someone else that year, and sure enough, FGCU won. So I have vowed never to bet against Semesco.
Well, and I think that's
again.
A pretty good decision thought process.
Yeah, he's pretty good at this. Meanwhile, as disappointing a men's basketball season as maybe has ever happened here at FGCU, what could go wrong did go wrong. Christian Carlisle, who would have been the starting power forward, gets hurt in the summer. Brian Thomas, who was the starting center, gets hurt 7 minutes into the season. Hardy was hurt. Hector was hurt. And then 11 games decided by 5 points or less, in which they went 3-8. I mean, it was just a domino effect, and it started really 8 months ago.
Well, and I take my responsibility on that too. I think if I'd looked back and knew what was going to happen, we wouldn't have scheduled what we did. And we put ourselves in a position where you look at Liberty, who wound up being the best team in the league. I think they went like 14-1, but their non-conference schedule was really, really weak.
I think it was like 330 out of 350.
Yeah, and you don't want to ever go that route, but we put ourselves in a position again where we played USC and VCU and St. Louis, and Robert Morris wound up winning the Northeast Conference tournament. South Dakota State, who had another strong year, amongst some others, and I just looked at it and said, okay, I took a part of this, and maybe we could have gotten off to a better start. That could have helped us, maybe gaining a little bit more confidence, and we could have won some of those other close games. But when you have a young team that is normal as they grow, and we look forward to Caleb and some of the other young players now that they're going to be juniors and in a position of senior, the individuals that came in this year, for the most part, our junior class, other than Brian, who was injured for the most part, were newcomers. So hopefully that ability, and basketball, we all know is such a team sport, will gel better. And with the new players coming in, we look forward to next year being much better.
If you think about it, heading into this season, FGCU was only going to have 2 players who had ever played more than 1 year of Division I college ball. Those 2 players were Christian Carlisle, injured, missed the whole season. Brian Thomas suffered a serious knee injury and gutted it out for the rest of the year, but was not nearly the player that he was heading into the season. I mean, I know he had thoughts of being a Player of the Year type candidate and a Defensive Player of the Year type candidate. So when you think about it, their 2 most experienced players were not nearly what they thought they were going to be, or no production at all. You could see why the year went south. A lot of returning scoring, however. Next year they'll have over 70% of their points that will come back next season, obviously in need of a bounce back year. Swimming and diving, meanwhile, had another terrific season, and sometimes you can do your best and still not win a championship, and your best could be better than anyone's ever done before.
Yeah, we wound up finishing second again to Liberty. It's either been us or Liberty that have won, I think, the last, I think it's now 12 or 13 championships. We've won 9 of them, and I think they've won 3 or 4. We've had some great individual performances, in particular led by Petra Halma, our juniors. We felt a bit an All-American if she had the chance to get in the pool in Athens for the Nationals, but she dominated at the CCSA in her 2 events in the breaststroke. The 200 breaststroke was the one that she qualified as the 10th fastest time in the country. It was only getting better as the year went on. So it's a disappointment that Petra wasn't able to go to compete in the NCAA championships, and we had some other individuals that won gold medals at the championships, and we had a really young team, and we believe coming back next year, we hope to be the favorites to go back and win a championship.
Before we put the winter season to bed, with either what your gut feeling is from the conversations that you've had with other athletic directors, with maybe some folks at the NCAA, there is talk of allowing certain athletes, if they fit certain criteria, to come back again and compete next year. Most of that is just for the spring sports, but like you mentioned, Petra, an outstanding diver. Do you think that there will be any wiggle room for some winter sports athletes to be able to come back to their schools next year?
I believe there is. I would be in favor of that. I think anybody whose season was basically done, it was done. They had a chance no different than the fall sports to get to where they needed to be. But those elite athletes, in particular like Petra, the swimming and divers, wrestlers who had earned their way to go to the NCAA championships, gymnastics was another sport like that. I believe that they're not going to sway the balance of scholarships, and it's really very difficult roster management for people as they're going to try to work through it with the spring sport. So I believe it should happen. I don't think there's going to be enough support, and as much as we'd love to have our core of those seniors coming back for women's basketball,
right.
I think it's time. And a number of individuals wouldn't choose to come back anyway. It's time for them to go on to their next stage of their life, whether it's a career opportunity they're getting ready to start, or going to med school, law school, grad school of some sort. It's just an element that I think for some people we're done, and it's unfortunately didn't end as easily as we would have liked in a normalcy. But I think from that standpoint, only the individual sport who are at the NCAA level should be able to go.
On to the spring season, in which many an FGCU team was off to a very promising start. Let's start with softball then. They were picked to finish in the top 3 in the league, and they were on a roll. I believe had won like 7 of 8 when their season came to a halt, and the A-Sun is always good at softball.
Well, yeah, the A-Sun just collectively, as we've been in the last several years, I think we've been as high as 5th 2 or 3 years ago, and we've been in the top 10 on almost a regular basis. And the rankings for the conference, we were 6th this year. So it shows, again, the strength. We certainly were part of that. We were 19 and 8 as the season came to a close, and we were scoring a lot of runs. We had gone up the weekend before up to Madeira Beach, and we scored 24 runs in one game, 12 in 2 others. I was worried when we scored the 24 runs. We had a game later that day that we would have maybe needed some of those runs, and we scored 7 in the first inning. So, and I think we had a record number of home runs while we were doing it. It was a really fun team to watch, and in a position where it came by too quickly. They at least got 27 games in because baseball only got 16 in. But when baseball was going, they had won 8 of their last 9. We were in a situation we were all excited to have the brand new release of the new video board that Chris and Brian Sale graciously donated to us, and in a situation we'll have to postpone using that, although there was a little scoreboard we had for a short period of time. It was like a Little League scoreboard.
Yes, it was.
That was 5-0, and it also beat number 22 Pepperdine. So Coach had mentioned to Chris that until that scoreboard lost, we were going to continue to use it.
Hey, you don't mess with a winning streak. For those that have played Little League baseball or softball, it had just enough lights on it for the score, the inning, but hey, it had enough lights for balls, strikes, and outs. And when you think about it, I mean, do you really need to know the speed of the pitch and what have you? I mean, no advertising though, so I know that, well, obviously we couldn't stay with it.
Coach Toe had to put his reading glasses on or get somebody to help him remember how many bulbs, because it wasn't a number for balls, strikes, and out, it was little bulbs, so it could be confusing.
The difficulty with the baseball team going forward, though, is that they had a lot of good juniors a year ago who figuring out whether or not they're going to get drafted, and if so, if they're going to be drafted high enough, and do I go pro or do I stay at FGCU? And a lot of them came back to FGCU, and you wonder, even though we think the NCAA is going to say, hey, we'll give you a mulligan, and you could do your senior year again, but, FGCU's, whether it's Coffers, Garcia, Brait, Grisecki.
Mason still had a great start.
Yes, and so you wonder, if they come back, well, my goodness. FGCU, which was picked to finish 2nd this year in the league, they'll be absolutely loaded next year. But those are going to be very interesting, difficult decisions for those individuals.
Yeah, in particular when you talk about professional baseball, as you well know, David, that you don't want to get too old before they come into the next group of individuals that they're going to draft and so forth. So that's why a lot of, besides the ability for somebody who gets drafted, having leverage in the marketplace, do I want to come back or stay, and you can use that to maybe get some more resources. People want to get their career started. So there'll be a lot of tough decisions, and you also, again, as I mentioned earlier, roster management.
Yep.
You can only have so many players play. There's only 9 players in the lineup at any given time, and sure, you have extra pitchers and so forth, but for the everyday position players, they want to play, and we've got a group, I think there's 10 or 12 new players that are already committed and signed for next year, so there'll be an opportunity for some that they won't want to even take, and for others that will be glad to have them back, and that will be over the next couple of weeks. I think the decision to allow those spring athletes to come back will be finalized, and then the question is who will want to come back.
Coach Toe did get his 600th win at FGCU and for his career during this abbreviated 9-7 season. Beach volleyball was off to its best start ever.
Had a really great team coming back from a year ago where we finished 2nd to Stetson in the conference championship. They wound up beating USC, who was number 1 in the country in the NCAA tournament. So it showed you we really had a competitive team. We started off 4-0 and the season came to an end. But Chris Sweat is our new head coach. He had been our assistant for a number of years. He's connected to that Olympian that we have and Brooke Youngquist Sweat. And Chris has been a phenomenal member of our staff. It allows Matt Botsford to concentrate more on his indoor team. He's still helping out when needed with the beach team, and so at least for right now, Chris is undefeated for his career.
That is true. He can rest on that for many a month. Let's go to golf. The women's golf program off to, at least as best I could tell over the years, best start they've ever had.
Yeah, we had won 2 tournaments. We had finished second in our last tournament out of 53 teams, had some great individual performances along the way, and they have a very talented roster that will come back. And again, depending on what will happen with the rule, if Elsa Clark wants to come back, she had a really good year already. So we were excited. This was a year we were hoping in another couple of weeks that we were going to be competing for our first championship and NCAA postseason appearance, but it got put to a point that now hopefully next year the confidence will be with them, and we'll be looking forward to adding a couple extra players. Coach has got a good recruiting class coming in on top of that.
And it's not just FGCU. I mean, this has happened to dozens of colleges across the country where sometimes you gear up and this was going to be the year. I mean, this was when, everything with the young ace recruits, with the experienced kids, and they were going to meet together, and you get the one transfer and you only get them for a year. And it seemed as if for women's golf, I mean, this has been a sport, not a lot of resources, a work in progress. It seemed as if this was the year.
Yeah, and again, hopefully with the roster that we have, we'll be able to even, like I said, we've got 2 young ladies that are some of the top junior college players in the country, so we believe we'll have even a stronger roster next year, and we'll go from there. And then on the men's side, Andrew Dana came in as our new head coach and really added a lot of energy to the program. He's got a really strong recruiting class coming in next year, but took this current group, and they were playing very well, had some good performances. So on both sides of the equation, we're already looking forward to next year in the golf season.
I know both tennis programs had scheduled very aggressively with some big early season matches, and literally the conference season was just about to start or had just started, in which, well, both programs were picked to finish pretty high.
Well, Courtney and CJ have just done a remarkable job the last 5 years in particular, are building our team to be what we would consider to be the strongest, if not with UNF 1 and 1A. Liberty's added themselves to the mix last year. They were going to host the conference tournament this year. So our high-level expectations for our team lends itself to them going out and playing good competition in the preseason to get ready for the postseason. Some other teams may have had better records if you would look at the ASUN non-conference standings, but the quality of our schedules, I think, by far were the strongest. So we're in a position where, we look at individuals that we talked about for some other sports. Maya, who's been our top women's player, is someone who's a senior from Sweden, tremendous scholar athlete, as well as the #1 player and has been the player of the conference, is in a position where she's indicated to us she'd like to come back next year. So that's already an exciting new recruit for Coach Vernon as we go into it. CJ's still working through his roster, and he may have some individuals that he'll be able to have come back. So that senior leadership is so important, as you said earlier, to team success. They're used to winning. They know what the coaches want. And the tennis teams already have done that for 4 or 5 years. So we hope that we can have some individuals that can go back and put us in a position where the newcomers coming next year will be dealing with individuals who know what we need to do to win the ASUN and go to the NCAAs.
Well, it's also nice in which when a match starts, there's every now and then you've got certain players in which you can kind of go, well, there's a point. It's always nice in your mind to be up 1-0 or 2-0 when a match starts. One final question I have about the ASUN: in the spring sports anyway, they award, and I think they do it in the fall, where if you're the regular season conference champion one year, you will host that tournament the next. So are we going to go back to the 2019 champions and determine who's going to host in 2021? Like you were scheduled to host baseball this year. Do you think you'll be hosting baseball next year?
Well, the only sport that really does it that way is volleyball, and because we won the regular season, we'll host again in the fall. For the other sports, it's actually based on bidding, and so at this juncture, we haven't discussed it. Does FGCU get first shot whether we want to host next year, or will it just go to Liberty, who was already scheduled to host?
Gotcha.
That's a dialogue. Sometimes coaches like Coach Toe would prefer to be on the road. They're very superstitious. There's a lot of work that actually goes in if you're hosting, because if you have weather delays, your team deals with the tarp and so forth. And I can't remember the last time the host team won the conference tournament. And I think that goes into his mindset as well. So we're at a point where we have to work through some of the things. But the way it works basically is the 2 soccers and basketball is the higher seed team host.
Right.
And then in volleyball, because of basketball needing facility understanding and what dates are available for non-conference games, we do pick and say, okay, we're going to decide a year in advance for volleyball. And then the other sports have a tendency to either rotate, like cross country, and we hosted this year, or they go by a bidding process, and some schools bid like we do in most sports and others don't.
So let's wrap up the entire sports year 2019-2020. Academically, once again, your student athletes continue to excel at a higher rate than the general student population. I think the numbers were as good as they've ever been.
Yeah, we have, I think it's 21 straight semesters. We hope in a couple of weeks we'll make it 22, that our undergraduate population, in comparison to our student athletes, that we've exceeded. And we've done it strong results, not just barely doing so. We've had great results that we were able to announce this year in terms of how we were the top team, not only in the ASUN again, but also the state of Florida, in terms of teams that had perfect national public recognition scores for the academic progress rate. And our graduation success rate this year was the top in the ASUN. So a lot of things that we take a lot of pride in beyond what we do in the competition element of being on the fields and courts and so forth. And we think that's more important in the long run, and we're very proud of our student athletes, as we are with our community service. You know, Dr. McTarnigan, when he started years ago at the university, that you needed 80 hours to graduate of community service or learning documented servicing hours. We take a lot of pleasure in doing that, and more so team projects that we do besides the individuals, and you know, just hoping again to create a resource to give back to our community, but also to build them as well-rounded individuals when they leave the nest.
Well, FGCU, it is literally in their doctrine about community service. So you can't be a student athlete here and not give back. You won't be a student athlete here very long. I think the final numbers are 3-2, 3 conference championships in the regular season, and what would have been 2 NCAA tournament appearances. The women dominating from a conference championship standpoint. I think you, let's see, volleyball, basketball, soccer.
Yep, 3 more there, and we are in petitioning mode for a 4th one for women's basketball. I believe that we should share the championship for the women's basketball tournament with Liberty. We both won 2 games. It wasn't like the tournament wasn't played.
So co-champions, basically.
Co-champions, and I think that would generate, you know, us putting the number 2020 up on the white banner there for the team. Some rightfully may say, well, we wouldn't lose, we would have won, and so forth. But, you know, I think it's an opportunity for us to still refer to that team as a double champion, which I believe they were in that position. And then Petra going to the NCAAs allowed us to once again have another individual from our swimming and diving program there. Did mention earlier, it's not along those lines, but with our diving team, we had another successful, really a tremendous year for our diving team. David Boyko, our diving coach, was co-CCSA Diving Coach of the Year, and Reese Wakefield, our freshman, was tremendous. She was the co-diver of the year. Her sister, Megan, had to sit out this year for health reasons. She's been in that position the year before, so we have the 2 Wakefield sisters from Canada that have come down and just been tremendous, and we look forward to both of them diving together, not swimming together next year. But I didn't want to forget to recognize that Reese had a tremendous year, and she was recognized at the CCSA level.
You're a little surprised the NCAA didn't essentially release a bracket and at least say, listen, we understand there were still 4 days left in the season, but at the point that the season was essentially halted, this is what the tournament field would have looked like, and given some closure to a bunch of teams to be able to at least hang up the NCAA banner, for the athletes to, especially the seniors in which their careers were cut short, they could go off into their young adulthood going, we made the tournament. That's a good feeling. Are you surprised they didn't? Because to me, Ken, that would have taken 2 hours in a conference call.
Yeah, and I understand the reasoning, what they eventually gave. I think for what reasoning they gave, I think the underlying reasoning is they didn't want to pour salt in the wounds who wouldn't have been selected, and in a difficult time, make it more difficult for them just to be told that you definitely weren't going to make it. Now they can always have that hope. We could have made it.
Right.
But I personally would have liked to have seen it happen. I think it would have been an exciting situation for everybody. Let's use on the men's basketball side, Rutgers. Haven't been in your home state.
Right, 91.
91. And they deserved it. Everybody knew they were going to get in, but nobody can definitely say they were, because you never know what's going to happen with committees, but at the same time, I think it would have been deserving of those teams. And a lot of times you make decisions at that juncture. We have to do this based on this is where we're at, weather delays or whatever. And I think, in my mind, that's where we're at. We're at a point, okay, we're going to have to make a decision, let's go. They were talking at one point of only taking 16 teams to the tournament. To me, that would have been extremely hard to sell to anyone, in particular schools like ourselves, where we were just outside the top 16. So I think what they could have done, most of us were disappointed with. I realize the rationale aspects of why they didn't, but I think a lot of us would have loved to see where the ladies would have been in that bracket, and it looked like it would have been a 7, 8, 9, 10 situation.
To be honest with you, I think they could do it now. I think they could do it in 2 weeks from now. I mean, it's just an exercise, you know, you get a few people, Skype, I mean, nobody's leaving their homes.
And worst comes to worst, you and I can do it.
Well, hey, I'll always throw my 2 cents in on anything. I don't expect anyone to listen, but I'll throw my 2 cents in just about anywhere. Anything else you want to say about the 2019-2020 sports year before we look ahead to actually 2 or 3 pretty exciting things that are on the menu here coming up in the fall?
Well, again, I just want to thank all our seniors and the ones that may not be coming back in terms of the seniors that have the opportunity, but all of them. You know, we have banquets, and the main thing is to honor seniors because they're the ones who are providing the daily leadership. They've been here the longest in most instances, and we just wish them all the best as they go into the next chapters, and we hope that they'll totally understand once an eagle, always an eagle.
I mentioned a few things on the menu for 2020 and 2021. You've already touched upon it. I guess we will have a celebration at some point for what the sales have done for the baseball team and the beautiful scoreboard that is now out in right center field. But you guys are going big. All right, you guys you're just old enough now as a school and athletic department that you can go big. You're going to have a Hall of Fame.
And we've had a semi-one. If you look in either here upstairs outside our suites or down over in the OSC, we've had some big pictures of some pretty significant Eagles over our time. Now we believe it's ready to go ahead and make it an official Hall of Fame. I personally brought in a prejudice that I felt that a student athlete needed to be gone at least 10 years before you started a Hall of Fame, because your best, to Chris Sale, they could be in and they're at 26, 27 years old. And I just don't think they enjoy it as much as when they're 32 and 33. And I know that from experience, having been in institutions that did it when it was a 5-year minimum only versus a 10-year. So I just personally felt that Chris Sale needed to be in the very first Hall of Fame. We haven't done the votes yet. I'm just guessing. And in turn, in a position where, as we go forward, we'll provide a better platform for honorees that go in at the first vote, be in a position they can enjoy it more. So we'll start doing that. We'll have, in about another month, we'll be doing a release on how it all will unfold. We'll be in a position where we will take nominees, then a committee member will have to second that and so forth. But we've got some good folks like yourself that are going to help us go through that have a lot of experience.
Big mistake by you.
And,
big mistake.
What we'll basically be doing is taking no more than 5 individuals in a given year, try to work it around the early part of the ASUN schedule to have a dinner, and then the next day at halftime of a basketball game, induct those honorees. And then we'll also be doing it with teams. And normally we'll make teams wait 20 years for that, but there may be a team or two that will get a special exception this first time around. So we won't spoil any things on that, but we're looking to do something for this first class that won't be done in future years.
Well, a guy who was a head coach of a very special team here, Andy Enfield, is going to make his triumphant return to Alico Arena in November of 2020, because the next men's basketball season will start with the Eagles hosting the Trojans from USC. That's going to be pretty special.
That'll be fun. And you know, some people don't want to do that. They don't want to risk their legacy or coming back and so forth. And Andy's been great. We played them there this year. We had a pretty good game against them, and we'll go back there again the following year. But we'll open the season, and my understanding, he has the #1 recruit in the country. So his very first game, I think his name is Ethan Mobley, if I got the name correctly.
I believe you're right.
7-footer will play his very first game here in Alico Arena. So you know, that's exciting. We've got a really good men's schedule already set with Rhode Island coming back.
Mercer.
Mercer, who's our rival, they had a really young team with a new coach and beat ETSU, who wound up winning the Southern Conference. Dartmouth comes down as a return game from the Ivy League. So we're excited about that. On the women's side, Princeton, who was one of the few teams to beat us and had a great team, I think they finished 9, 10, 11 in the RPI. They return. And we have Temple coming back. And Carl, as always, does not shy away from strong schedules. We have a lot more games on the women's side to still schedule, but look forward to providing the atmosphere that our fans have been used to in the last several years.
And it may seem like a little thing, but I love the fact that USC and FGC are going to play in men's basketball on a Tuesday night, because let's face it, that's the middle of football season, the beginning of the college basketball season. We love our football in Southwest Florida. If it was on a Friday or a Saturday night, but instead it's going to be on the first day of the college basketball season. It's going to be that Tuesday in November. And so to me, if in fact you have a little something special the night before and then the game on the Tuesday, I also think for FGCU, it's going to be good. It's going to create a college basketball buzz early, because oftentimes the buzz is kind of a murmur until football season's all but over. I actually think you're going to create some early buzz.
Well, we hope that buzz would be that a national television audience would be interested in the game. So, we're going to work through those things. It really is exciting to start the season, as you mentioned, in such a unique way.
And finally, do you expect that, because it is yet to be approved, although the indication is that it will, do you expect the spring athletes who had their careers cut short long before their seasons were done, do you expect them to get essentially a mulligan year?
I do. I have not heard really much any other perspective on it. The only question really will be the old devil's in the details. And again, whether some of these seniors want to come back, or do they want to be in a position where they decided, I got
to move on.
Yeah, it's time, whether professional opportunities athletically or career-wise. Some of these,
real world.
Yeah, these kids have some really good opportunities in front of them that they want to get their next chapter started. So I think there'll be something that we'll work through, most likely just for the seniors. Others have said, well, why don't you provide it to everybody? I think that will get way too complicated. I think the gut feeling for everybody was like, these are kids whose careers ended in a very harsh way. Everybody's seasons ended in a harsh way, but I think the element of just this senior class is where the empathy is really lying. We'll have to work through some roster management. We'll have to work through some scholarship excesses this year that I think they'll provide waivers. So it just simply comes down to an opportunity for us to be able to do the right thing for those who want to do it, and I think within the next month we'll have that decision.
And obviously, because of the coronavirus, there are no end-of-the-year banquets or anything like that, which is another thing, as we've seen over the years. I've hosted a few. It's a chance for the fans to mingle for one last time and thank the players and all that. Hey, everything got cut short this year. Knock on you-know-what, everything is good here at FGCU, and that everyone stays safe.
Well, and to that
healthy.
point, we've had, in particular because of, as you mentioned previously, about the women's basketball being such a special season, could we do something for them? They had such a large senior class. We're still going to try to do something. It may not ever come to fruition, but as things become safer for us to do things in larger groups, we could possibly do something middle of the summer, end of the summer, even maybe beginning of next year for those who could come back. So we don't want to lose sight of it. That team will certainly go someday into the Hall of Fame. But if we can honor and celebrate that group sooner, we will. We had our annual Nesties that we've done, which honors all our athletes that we always do just before finals start. That won't occur this year, but working with our staff, we're going to try to create memorable experiences and maybe do some things online that maybe we could present the winners in a different platform this year. But we don't want to lose fact that we've got great individuals that still should be thanked and honored, and try to do it in a way that's safe for everybody.
It was an interesting 2019-2020 year, to say the least. It obviously ended the way it did, but also for FGCU, there were some major highs, there were some crushing losses, but all in all, academically, on the field, it was pretty good.
Again, the senior class in particular continued the legacy of what FGCU athletics has been about on and off the field, and that's our responsibility, is to bring in new individuals to keep it going, and we've been able to do it with some tremendous coaches who've grasped it. Some of our coaches, we've been so blessed, that are the only coaches we've ever had, and I think that's part of a young but unique program that we have. When you think of certain teams, you think of that head coach who's the only coach we've ever had.
Four, right?
Yep. Coach Semesco, Coach Tillett, Coach Deros, and Coach Blankenship for those 4 tremendous teams. So we've got a blend of many other new coaches that have come in over the last several years who have created their own marks, and we're in a position where our responsibility is leave it better than we found. Our senior class did that again this year, and we look forward to continuing it.
Thanks to you for watching. Thanks to your support of FGCU Athletics. For Ken Kavanagh, I'm David Moulton. This has been State of the Eagles.
Stay safe, God bless, and go Eagles.